It begins, as so many ghost stories do, with a night that should have been ordinary. The year is 1897. The world is still young, the sky unclaimed by wings or engines, and the land is stitched together by lonely farms and flickering lanterns. On the outskirts of a nameless Midwestern town, a family sits in uneasy silence, the day's work behind them, the hush of the prairie pressing in from all sides. The only sound is the wind, restless in the grass, and the distant, mournful call of a night bird. But then something changes. The air grows heavy, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The family's old hound, usually indifferent to the night, lifts its head and whines, a low, uncertain sound. The youngest child, half asleep by the fire, stirs and shivers, sensing a presence that cannot be seen. Outside, the darkness deepens, swallowing the familiar shapes of barn and field, until the world is nothing but shadow and silence. And then, without warning, a light appears in the sky. Not the cold, steady glow of a star, nor the flicker of a lantern, but something altogether different, brighter, yet somehow muffled, as if wrapped in fog. It hovers, impossibly still, above the fields. The family gathers at the window, hearts pounding, eyes wide with fear and wonder. The light pulses, shifts, and for a moment it seems to take shape, a vast, silent vessel suspended in the night, its outline just visible against the blackness. No sound, no engine, no explanation. Just the silent voyage of something that should not exist. The family watches, transfixed, as the light drifts slowly across the sky, vanishing as suddenly as it appeared. In the aftermath, the silence is deeper than before, as if the world itself is reluctant to speak of what has passed. The family will tell their neighbors, who will scoff or shudder, and soon the story will spread, one of many, all different, all the same. But for every witness who speaks, there are others who claim to have seen nothing at all. And that, perhaps, is the strangest part of all, a mystery not just of what was seen, but of what was denied, forgotten, or left unspoken. The sky ghost had come and gone, leaving only questions in its wake. In 1897, America stood at a crossroads, teetering between the old world and the new. The country was a patchwork of bustling cities and endless, lonely stretches of farmland. Railroads stitched the coasts together, telegraph wires hummed with distant voices, and the first electric lights flickered in the windows of the wealthy. Yet for most, life remained rooted in the soil, governed by the slow rhythms of planting and harvest, sunrise and sunset. The world was changing, but the change was uneven, and the shadows of the unknown still pressed close to the edges of the familiar. It was a time of boundless optimism. Newspapers brimmed with tales of invention and progress, Edison's electric marvels, Bell's talking wires, the promise of horseless carriages and flying machines. The great expositions dazzled the public with visions of a future shaped by human ingenuity. In the cities, factories belched smoke and fortunes were made overnight. The American spirit, restless and ambitious, seemed poised to conquer every frontier, even the sky itself. But beyond the city lights, in the vast heartland, the future felt more distant. Here, the nights were long and the silence profound. Families lived miles from their nearest neighbors, their lives marked by hard labor and the ever-present uncertainty of weather, crop, and fate. The prairie was a place of both beauty and menace, its open spaces promising freedom, but also isolation. The darkness was deeper here, and the imagination, unanchored by the noise and bustle of urban life, could run wild. It was in these quiet places that the first whispers of the sky ghost began to circulate. The air was thick with stories of strange lights, mysterious visitors, and things that moved in the night. Some said it was the spirit of progress itself, a harbinger of the wonders to come. Others, more cautious, saw it as a warning, a sign that the world was changing too quickly, that something vital was being lost in the rush toward modernity. The contrast was stark. In the cities, the unknown was a challenge to be met, a puzzle to be solved. In the countryside, it was a threat, a shadow at the edge of the lantern's glow. The same event, a light in the sky, a shape glimpsed in the darkness, could inspire awe in one place and terror in another. The old superstitions had not yet faded, and the new science had not yet fully arrived. America was caught between faith and reason, hope and fear. Yet, even as the nation looked forward, there was a sense of unease, a feeling that the world was not as knowable as it seemed. The newspapers that celebrated invention also carried stories of disaster fires, floods, and inexplicable tragedies. The same telegraph wires that brought news of progress also spread rumors and panic. The more connected the country became, the more quickly fear could travel. It was in this atmosphere of hope, tinged with dread, of innocence, shadowed by uncertainty, that the phantom airship made its appearance. The reports were as varied as the people who gave them. A saucer-shaped craft, a glowing orb, a silent machine with wings like a bat. Some described voices calling down from the sky, or strange men in outlandish clothes. Others saw only a light, moving against the wind, vanishing before it could be explained. The authorities were baffled. Scientists scoffed, but could offer no better explanation. The newspapers, ever hungry for sensation, fanned the flames, turning isolated incidents into a national obsession. For a few brief weeks, the sky itself seemed to tremble with possibility and menace. And yet, beneath the excitement, there was a deeper current, a sense that something fundamental was shifting. The old certainties were slipping away, replaced by questions that had no easy answers. What was real, and what was imagined? What could be trusted, and what should be feared? In 1897, America was on the brink not just of a new century, but of a new way of seeing the world, one in which the boundaries between fact and fiction, science and superstition, would never again be so clear. It was in this liminal space, between the known and the unknown, that the legend of the sky ghost was born. And it was here, in the uneasy twilight of an age, that the mystery would take root, casting its long shadow over the years to come. The first whispers came in March, drifting on the cold winds that swept across the plains. In a small town in Kansas, a farmer named Alexander Hamilton, no relation to the statesman, claimed to have seen something extraordinary. He described a brilliant light, brighter than any lantern, gliding silently above his fields. It moved with purpose, not like a shooting star or a drifting cloud, but as if guided by an unseen hand. Hamilton's neighbors scoffed at first, but within days, others began to report similar encounters. The stories spread like wildfire, leaping from town to town, each new account more fantastic than the last. In the darkness of rural Texas, a group of cowboys riding home after a long day's work spotted a glowing object hovering above the mesquite trees. They watched, spellbound, as it drifted overhead, casting an eerie, bluish light across the landscape. One of the men, a hard-bitten rancher with no patience for tall tailies, swore he could see a metallic hull, rivets glinting in the moonlight. Another claimed to hear voices faint, mechanical, speaking in a language he could not understand. The men rode home in silence, each haunted by what he had seen, or thought he had seen. The reports multiplied. In Illinois, a school teacher described a cigar-shaped vessel with brilliant searchlights moving against the wind. In Nebraska, a group of children playing after supper saw a glowing orb descend into a nearby field, only to vanish when they ran to investigate. In Iowa, a traveling salesman claimed to have been followed for miles by a silent, winged machine, its lights flickering like fireflies. Each story was different, yet eerily similar: a light in the sky, a sense of awe, and dread, and always the silence. The newspapers seized on the phenomenon, their headlines growing more breathless with each passing day. Mysterious airship startles Midwest. Strange visitor in the night sky. Is this the dawn of human flight? The stories were often contradictory, filled with wild speculation and dubious details, but the effect was electric. People gathered in the streets, scanning the heavens, hoping for a glimpse of the unknown. Children pressed their faces to frosty windows, while their parents whispered nervously about what it all might mean. As the sightings spread, so did the rumors. Some said the airship was the work of a secret inventor, testing a new kind of flying machine. Others whispered of foreign spies, or even visitors from another world. A few, recalling old tales of omens and portents, saw the lights as a warning, a sign that something terrible was about to happen. The more the authorities tried to dismiss the reports, the more fevered the speculation became. In the small town of Aurora, Texas, the story took a darker turn. Residents awoke one morning to find their town in an uproar. According to the local paper, an airship had crashed in a nearby field, leaving behind a trail of twisted metal and, most disturbingly, the body of a Martian pilot. The tale was quickly dismissed as a hoax, but the damage was done. The line between fact and fiction had blurred, and the legend of the sky ghost had taken on a life of its own. Not all the stories were so dramatic. In many cases, the sightings were fleeting, a flash of light, a shadow moving across the moon, a strange hum in the air. Some witnesses described feelings of euphoria or terror, as if the very presence of the airship had altered the fabric of reality. Others reported nothing at all, insisting that the whole thing was a masked illusion, a trick of the mind brought on by too much excitement and too little sleep. Yet the reports kept coming. In California, a group of miners claimed to have seen an airship land in the hills, its crew emerging to ask for water before vanishing into the night. In Indiana, a preacher described a vision of angels descending from the sky, their wings made of shining metal. In Missouri, a young woman swore she saw a man waving from the deck of a floating ship, his face illuminated by an unearthly glow. Each new account added another layer to the mystery, fueling a sense of collective obsession. People began to keep journals, recording every strange light and unexplained noise. Amateur astronomers set up telescopes in their backyards, scanning the skies for signs of the unknown. The air was thick with anticipation, and a kind of fever gripped the nation, a hunger to see, to know, to be part of something extraordinary. But for every person who claimed to have witnessed the sky ghost, there were others who saw nothing at all. Some refused to look, afraid of what they might find. Others watched the skies night after night, only to be met with darkness and disappointment. The paradox deepened. The more people searched, the more elusive the phenomenon became. And yet the stories would not die. They lingered in the air, whispered in the dark, passed from one trembling hand to another. The sky ghost had become more than a mystery. It was a mirror, reflecting the hopes and fears of a nation on the edge of the unknown. What, then, was the truth behind these lights in the night? Were they the first glimpses of a new age, or the last echoes of an old one? As the sightings grew stranger and the rumors more wild, one thing became clear. The story was far from over, and the most bizarre accounts were still to come. The heart of the sky ghost mystery beats in the chests of those who claimed to have seen it and those who insisted they had not. In the spring of 1897, the American landscape was dotted with witnesses, each carrying their own version of the truth, each shaped by the peculiar alchemy of memory, fear, and longing. Their stories, when woven together, form a tapestry as contradictory and haunting as the phenomenon itself. Consider the case of Martha Ellison, a widow living on the outskirts of Decatur, Illinois. On a night thick with fog, she stepped outside to fetch water from the well. She would later recall how the world seemed to pause, the air charged with a strange electricity. Above her, a luminous shape hovered, its lights shifting from blue to gold, casting long, trembling shadows across the yard. Martha described the craft in detail. It was as long as a barn, with windows like lanterns, and I could see figures moving inside, tall, thin, not like any man I've ever known. Her voice, when she told her story, was steady, but her hands shook. She was certain of what she'd seen, and yet when her neighbors questioned her, some with concern, others with ridicule, she found herself doubting her own senses. Maybe it was a trick of the light, she would say, her certainty eroding with each retelling. In contrast, Sheriff Amos Wilkins of Clay County, Missouri, was a man not easily rattled. He had spent his life chasing down cattle thieves and settling disputes with a calm, unflappable manner. But even he could not ignore the reports flooding his office. One night, after a particularly frantic call from a local farmer, Wilkins rode out to investigate. He saw nothing, no lights, no shapes, only the endless, indifferent sky. Yet the next morning, he found strange marks in the field, scorched grass, a circle of flattened earth, and the lingering scent of ozone. When pressed by reporters, Wilkins was careful with his words. "I didn't see anything myself," he said, "but something happened out there. I can't say what." His refusal to commit neither confirming nor denying became a kind of shield, protecting him from the ridicule that befell more credulous men. Then there was young Samuel Price, a farmhand from Iowa, whose testimony would become one of the most detailed and most contested of the entire wave. Samuel claimed to have seen the airship land in a nearby pasture. He described a door opening, a ramp descending, and two figures emerging, dressed in dark, close-fitting suits. They spoke to him in perfect English, asking for directions to the nearest town. Samuel, terrified but curious, pointed the way. The figures thanked him, returned to their ship, and vanished into the night sky. His story was met with disbelief, even hostility. Some called him a liar, others a fool. Samuel stuck to his account, but over time, the pressure wore him down. He stopped talking about that night and eventually left town altogether, his reputation in tatters. For every witness who spoke out, there were others who remained silent. Some feared ridicule, others feared something deeper, a sense that what they had seen was not meant to be spoken of, that to give it voice was to invite disaster. In the small town of Red Oak, Nebraska, a group of children saw a glowing object descend behind a stand of trees. They ran home, breathless with excitement, but their parents dismissed their story as childish fancy. The children learned quickly. Some things were better left unsaid. The psychology of belief is a fragile thing, especially in times of uncertainty. The human mind is both a recorder and a storyteller, shaping raw experience into something that fits the world as we wish it to be. For some, the sky ghost was a marvel, a sign that the future had arrived. For others, it was a threat, a crack in the safe, predictable order of things. And for many, it was simply too strange to accept. Denial became a kind of refuge, a way to keep the darkness at bay. Yet the line between belief and doubt was never clear. In the town of Peoria, Illinois, a group of townsfolk gathered nightly in the town square, scanning the sky for signs of the mysterious craft. Some claimed to see it, others saw only clouds and stars. Arguments broke out, friendships frayed. The air was thick with accusation and suspicion. "You're making it up," one man shouted. "You're blind," another retorted. The sky ghost became a test of loyalty, a dividing line between those who trusted their senses and those who trusted only what could be proven. The newspapers, ever eager for sensation, played both sides. They published lurid accounts of encounters with the airship, complete with sketches and breathless interviews. But they also ran editorials mocking the witnesses, suggesting that the whole affair was a case of mass hysteria, or worse, a deliberate hoax. The effect was corrosive. Those who had seen something began to doubt themselves. Those who had seen nothing felt vindicated in their skepticism. And yet the silence was as telling as the stories. In some towns, entire families refused to speak of what they had witnessed, as if silence could erase the memory. In others, the absence of testimony became its own kind of evidence, a void that hinted at secrets too terrible to share. So what was the truth? Were the witnesses liars, dreamers, or victims of some collective delusion? Or had they glimpsed something real, something that defied explanation? The answer, perhaps, lies not in the stories themselves, but in the spaces between them, in the silences, the denials, the uneasy laughter that follows a brush with the unknown. If you had been there, would you have spoken out? Or would you have kept your silence, guarding your secret against the cold, skeptical world? The sky ghost left its mark not just on the land, but on the hearts and minds of those who lived through that haunted spring. And in the end, it is the witnesses there, truths, their lies, their silences that keep the mystery alive. If the sky ghost haunted the night, it was the newspapers that haunted the day. In 1897, the American press was a living, breathing beast hungry for sensation, quick to pounce on the extraordinary, and unburdened by the constraints of modern fact-checking. The phantom airship was a gift, and the nation's editors unwrapped it with glee. The first reports were cautious, almost reverent. "Strange light seen over Kansas farm," read a modest headline in the Topeka Daily Capital. The article recounted a farmer's tale of a glowing object drifting silently above his fields, careful to note that no explanation has yet been offered by local authorities. But as the sightings multiplied, so did the headlines, growing bolder and more breathless with each passing day. "Mysterious airship startles Midwest," blared the Chicago Tribune. "Is this the dawn of human flight?" wondered the San Francisco Call. The Dallas Morning News ran a front-page illustration of a cigar-shaped craft, complete with portholes and waving passengers, as if the future had already arrived. The stories themselves were a patchwork of fact, rumor, and outright invention. Some papers published detailed interviews with supposed witnesses, their words rendered in dramatic prose. It was as if the stars themselves had come down to earth. One man was quoted as saying, his face pale with awe. Others printed wild speculation, suggesting the airship was the work of a secret society, a foreign power, or even visitors from Mars. The more outlandish the claim, the more ink it received. Yet for every paper that embraced the mystery, there was another that sought to debunk it. The New York Times, ever the voice of reason, ran a series of skeptical editorials. "Mass delusion grips the heartland," declared one, dismissing the sightings as the product of overactive imaginations and the peculiar loneliness of rural life. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch went further, accusing rival papers of perpetrating a hoax for the sake of circulation. "There is no airship." The editorial thundered. "There are only stories, and those who profit from telling them." This tension between belief and doubt, sensation and skepticism, played out in the pages of every major newspaper. Some editors saw the airship as a symbol of progress, a harbinger of the technological marvels to come. Others saw it as a dangerous distraction, a sign that the public was all too willing to abandon reason in favor of fantasy. The debate spilled over into letters to the editor, with readers passionately defending or denouncing the witnesses. "I have seen the light with my own eyes," wrote one correspondent from Iowa. "To deny it is to call me a liar." Another from Ohio countered, "The only thing in the sky is the moon, and the only thing in your head is nonsense." The press coverage was not merely a reflection of public opinion, it was a force that shaped it. The more the newspapers reported on the airship, the more people looked to the skies, and the more sightings were recorded. It became a feedback loop, a self-sustaining cycle of rumor and revelation. Editors understood this power and wielded it with a mix of cynicism and delight. Some papers even began to stage their own hoaxes, sending up lanterns or kites to fool the unwary, and then reporting on the resulting panic with barely concealed amusement. Yet, beneath the bluster and bravado, there was a genuine sense of uncertainty. The world was changing, and the old certainties no longer seemed so certain. The airship, whether real or imagined, became a symbol of that uncertainty, a floating question mark in the night sky. The newspapers, for all their noise, could not provide an answer. Instead, they offered a stage on which the nation could act out its hopes and fears, its longing for wonder, and its dread of the unknown. Some journalists, caught up in the excitement, became true believers. In the pages of the San Francisco Examiner, a reporter named William Randolph Hearst wrote breathlessly of the greatest mystery of our age, urging his readers to keep watch and send in their own accounts. Others, more jaded, saw only an opportunity for profit. If the airship did not exist, one editor quipped, we would have had to invent it. The frenzy reached its peak in late April, when reports of a crashed airship in Aurora, Texas, sent shockwaves across the country. The story, complete with tales of alien bodies and mysterious wreckage, was too good to resist. Papers from coast to coast reprinted the account, each adding its own embellishments. Skeptics howled, believers rejoiced, and the public was left to wonder, was this the proof they had been waiting for, or just another layer of the hoax? In the end, the newspapers did what they always do. They moved on. The headlines faded, replaced by new scandals and sensations. But the damage, or perhaps the magic, had been done. The sky ghost had entered the national imagination, its image shaped as much by ink and paper as by the eyes that claimed to see it. The press had not solved the mystery, but it had ensured that it would never be forgotten. And in the echo of those old headlines, we can still hear the questions that haunted a nation. What did we see? What did we believe? And who, in the end, was telling the truth? As the fever of the airship sightings swept across the country, explanations multiplied like shadows at dusk. Each new theory was a reflection of the age's anxieties and aspirations, a mirror held up to the American soul. The mystery of the sky ghost became a battleground where science clashed with superstition, faith with reason, and hope with fear. The most rational minds of the era turned first to science. The late 19th century was a time of invention, and the idea that a secret genius might have built a flying machine was not so far-fetched. Newspapers speculated about unnamed inventors, men of vision and means who had quietly achieved what the world's greatest engineers had only dreamed. Some pointed to Thomas Edison, whose name was already synonymous with miracles. Edison himself, when asked, denied any involvement, but the rumors persisted. It is possible, wrote one editorialist, that somewhere in the wilds of America, a man has conquered the air and is testing his creation in secret, away from the prying eyes of rivals and governments. This theory had its appeal. It fit the narrative of American ingenuity, the lone inventor toiling in obscurity, ready to unveil his masterpiece. It offered hope that the future was already here, just waiting to be revealed. But it also raised uncomfortable questions. If such a machine existed, why the secrecy? Why the silence? And why, after so many sightings, had no one come forward to claim the glory? Others, less trusting of human nature, saw darker motives at work. The specter of sabotage and espionage loomed large in the public imagination. The world was not at war, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. Some whispered that the airship was the work of foreign agents sent to spy on America's heartland. The craft's silence, its uncanny ability to appear and vanish at will, seemed almost supernatural unless, of course, it was the product of advanced technology, wielded by enemies unknown. The government, for its part, offered no answers. Officials dismissed the sightings as nonsense, but their very denial fueled suspicion. What were they hiding? Was the airship a harbinger of invasion, a test of defenses, or something even more? Sinister? For every voice of reason, there was another that spoke in the language of faith and superstition. The rural heartland, steeped in old beliefs, saw omens in the night sky. Preachers thundered from their pulpits, warning that the lights were signs of the end times, angels or demons sent to test the faithful. In some towns, prayer meetings were held to ward off the unknown, while in others, the airship was welcomed as a messenger from God. The contrast was stark. Where science saw a machine, faith saw a miracle or a warning. Yet not all explanations were so grand. Some doctors and psychologists, eager to assert their authority, diagnosed the phenomenon as a case of mass delusion. The human mind, they argued, was prone to suggestion, especially in times of uncertainty. A few vivid stories, repeated often enough, could spread like wildfire, infecting entire communities with visions of things that were never there. The newspapers, with their lurid headlines and breathless prose, were blamed for fanning the flames. The airship, wrote one skeptical physician, exists only in the imagination of a nervous and excitable people. This theory, too, had its adherents. It explained the contradictions, the wild variations in the reports, the way the sightings seemed to follow the news rather than the other way around. But it also dismissed the sincerity of the witnesses, reducing their experiences to mere hysteria. For those who had seen the sky ghost with their own eyes, this was an insult to denial, not just of the event, but of their very sanity. And then, inevitably, came the most outlandish theory of all, that the airship was not of this earth. The idea of visitors from other worlds was not new, but in 1897 it was still the province of dreamers and cranks. Yet, as the stories grew stranger accounts of strange beings, of voices speaking in unknown tongues, of machines that defied the laws of physics, the extraterrestrial explanation gained traction. Some witnesses described the craft as unlike anything built by human hands. Its movements too precise, its silence too complete. The tale of the Aurora crash, with its Martian pilot, was seized upon by those eager to believe that humanity was not alone. This theory, more than any other, captured the imagination. It offered a sense of wonder, a glimpse of a universe filled with possibilities. But it also inspired fear. If the airship was a visitor from another world, what did it want? Was it friend or foe? And why, after so many encounters, had it left only questions in its wake? The debate raged in parlors and saloons, in church halls and schoolhouses. Science and superstition, faith and reason, each claimed the mystery as their own. The lines were not always clear. Some who believed in secret inventors also feared government cover-ups. Some who saw omens in the sky also read every scientific journal they could find, searching for answers. The airship became a canvas onto which every hope and fear could be painted. Yet, beneath the surface, there was a deeper truth, a sense that the world was changing, and that the old ways of understanding were no longer enough. The sky ghost was a symptom, not a cause, of a society in transition. The boundaries between the possible and the impossible, the real and the imagined, were shifting. The very act of witnessing became suspect, colored by doubt and desire. In the end, no single theory could explain the phenomenon. Each offered a piece of the puzzle, but the whole remained elusive. The airship was a machine, a spirit, a delusion, a visitor, a hoax, and a revelation all at once. It was, above all, a mystery, and in that mystery lay its power. So, what do you believe? Was the sky ghost the work of a hidden genius, A foreign agent, a trick of the mind, or something from beyond the stars? Or was it, perhaps, all of these things a reflection of a world on the brink, searching for meaning in the darkness? Theories abound, but the truth, like the airship itself, remains just out of reach, drifting silently across the night sky. It happened as suddenly as it had begun. One night, the sky was alive with rumors and restless eyes. The next, it was empty, silent, indifferent, as if nothing had ever disturbed its ancient calm. The airship, the sky ghost, the phantom that had haunted the dreams and waking hours of a nation, simply vanished. No final spectacle, no grand farewell. Just a deepening quiet and the uneasy sense that something vital had slipped away. In the weeks leading up to the vanishing, anticipation had reached a fever pitch. Townsfolk gathered nightly in fields and on rooftops, scanning the heavens for a glimpse of the impossible. Children begged to stay up late, clutching their parents' hands as they peered into the darkness. Even the skeptics, those who had mocked and dismissed, found themselves drawn to the windows, unable to resist the pull of the unknown. The air was thick with expectation, every shadow a potential omen, every flicker of light a possible sign. And then, without warning, the sightings ceased. The lights no longer danced across the horizon. The strange hum, the metallic glint, the whispered voices all gone. The newspapers, once so eager to fill their pages with wild tales and breathless speculation, fell silent. Editors who had stoked the flames now turned their attention elsewhere, as if embarrassed by their own enthusiasm. The public, left with nothing but questions, began to turn inward, their excitement curdling into doubt and regret. For those who had witnessed the sky ghost, the silence was a wound. Martha Ellison, who had once described the luminous craft above her well, now avoided the subject entirely. Neighbors who had pressed her for details grew bored or suspicious, their curiosity replaced by a kind of collective amnesia. It was just a story, they said, a bit of excitement in a dull season. Martha, who knew what she had seen, felt the weight of their disbelief settle over her like a shroud. She stopped going to church, stopped visiting friends. The memory of that night became a private ache, something she carried alone. Sheriff Amos Wilkins, too, found himself haunted by the silence. The strange marks in the field, the scorched grass, the scent of ozone, these things remained, stubborn and unexplained. Yet, with no new reports, no fresh evidence, his investigation stalled. The townsfolk, eager to move on, began to treat the whole affair as a joke. Wilkins, a man of facts and order, was left with nothing but questions and a growing sense of unease. He wondered, late at night, if the silence itself was a kind of answer, a warning, perhaps, or a punishment for daring to look too closely. Samuel Price, the farmhand who had spoken with the mysterious visitors, found his life unraveling. The ridicule he had endured during the height of the sightings only intensified as the weeks passed. With no new stories to distract them, the townspeople turned their scorn on him, their laughter sharp and cruel. Samuel withdrew, his once vivid account fading into a half-remembered dream. He left town in the dead of night, leaving behind only rumors and a battered suitcase. The children of Red Oak, who had once run breathless through the fields, now kept their stories to themselves. Their parents, eager to restore order, forbade any mention of the sky ghost. The children learned to forget, or at least to pretend. The memory of the glowing object behind the trees became a secret, shared only in whispers, if at all. The silence spread, seeping into every corner of the country. The fever that had gripped the nation broke, leaving behind a kind of emptiness. The sky, once a canvas for wonder and fear, became just the sky, again vast, indifferent, unknowable. The sense of possibility that had electrified the air was gone. replaced by a dull ache, a longing for something that could not be named. Yet, beneath the surface, the tension remained. The sudden end of the sightings was itself a mystery, as perplexing as the phenomenon that had preceded it. Why had the sky ghost appeared, and why had it vanished? Had it grown tired of its audience? Or had it never been there at all? Was the silence a sign of safety, or a prelude to something worse? Some whispered that the government had intervened, silencing witnesses and suppressing evidence. Others believed that the airship had simply moved on, its purpose fulfilled or its curiosity sated. A few, clinging to hope, watched the skies night after night, convinced that the ghost would return. But most, weary and chastened, turned away. The world, it seemed, had no room for such mysteries. The aftermath was marked by a strange collective forgetting. The newspapers, once so bold, now treated the airship as a joke, a footnote in the annals of American oddities. The witnesses, once celebrated or scorned, faded into obscurity. The fields where the lights had danced grew over with grass and wildflowers, the marks erased by time and weather. Only the memory remained, fragile and uncertain, like a dream upon waking. But the loss was real, and it lingered. For a brief, shining moment, the world had seemed larger, stranger, filled with possibility. The sky ghost had opened a door, and its closing left a void. The silence was not just the absence of sound, but the absence of wonder, a reminder that the unknown, once glimpsed, can never be fully forgotten. And so, the night the sky went silent became its own kind of legend, a story told in hushed tones, a question left unanswered. What had happened? Why had the witnesses fallen silent? What was left behind, in the wake of the impossible? Perhaps the greatest mystery was not the airship itself, but the silence that followed, the way it settled over the land, heavy and impenetrable, leaving behind only shadows and the faint, persistent hope that one day the sky ghost might return. Until then, the night belonged once more to the wind, the stars, and the secrets that drift just beyond the reach of human understanding. In the months and years that followed, the story of the sky ghost slipped quietly from the front pages and into the shadows of memory. The fever that had once gripped the nation cooled, replaced by a kind of embarrassed silence. The airship wave became a ghost story in its own right, half remembered, half believed, and wholly unresolved. For many, the events of 1897 became little more than a curiosity, a strange episode best left in the past. Newspapers, once so eager to fan the flames, now treated the airship as a punchline. Editorials poked fun at the gullible yokels of the heartland, and cartoonists drew cigar-shaped balloons piloted by bumbling inventors or bug-eyed Martians. The serious questions, what had been seen and why, were quietly set aside. The world, it seemed, had moved on. But beneath the surface, the echoes lingered. In small towns and lonely farmhouses, the memory of those nights remained sharp and raw. For the witnesses, the silence that followed was not a relief, but a burden. Martha Ellison, once so certain of what she had seen, found herself doubting her own mind. She replayed the memory over and over, searching for some flaw, some sign that it had all been a dream. The more she tried to forget, the more the image haunted her, a luminous shape hovering above the well, silent and impossible. Others, like Sheriff Wilkins, became obsessed with the unanswered questions. He kept a box of clippings and notes, evidence that no one else wanted to see. The marks in the field, the scorched grass, the stories that didn't quite fit, these became his private puzzle, a mystery that refused to be solved. He grew distant, distracted, his faith in the ordinary world shaken. The sky, once a source of comfort, now seemed vast and indifferent, a reminder of how little he truly understood. Communities, too, bore the scars. In some towns, the airship became a forbidden subject, a source of shame or ridicule. Families who had spoken out found themselves isolated, their reputations tarnished by association with the unknown. Children learned to keep their stories to themselves, to hide their wonder behind a mask of skepticism. The lesson was clear. In a world that prized certainty, there was no place for mysteries that could not be explained. Yet in other places, the legend took root and flourished. The story of the sky ghost became part of local folklore, told around campfires and at kitchen tables. It was a tale to frighten children, to amuse the old, to remind everyone that the world was stranger than it seemed. Some towns even embraced the mystery, hosting festivals and parades in honor of their brush with the unknown. The airship became a symbol not of fear, but of possibility, a reminder that the sky still held secrets. The psychological impact was profound, if often unspoken. For those who had seen the lights, the experience was both a gift and a curse. It opened their eyes to the vastness of the world, to the limits of human understanding. But it also left them adrift, caught between belief and doubt, memory and denial. The silence that followed was not just the absence of the airship, but the absence of certainty, a wound that never quite healed. For the rest of the country, the airship wave faded into the background noise of history. New mysteries arose, new wonders and terrors to capture the public's imagination. The world moved on, but the questions remained, lingering in the dark. Corners of the mind. What had happened in those nights of 1897? Had the witnesses truly seen something extraordinary, or had they been swept up in a tide of hysteria and hope? In time, the story of the sky ghost became a kind of Rorschach test, a mirror for the anxieties and dreams of each new generation. Skeptics pointed to it as proof of the dangers of mass delusion, a cautionary tale about the power of rumor and fear. Believers saw it as evidence that the world was still full of wonders, that the unknown was always just beyond the horizon. For most, it was simply a mystery, a story to be told and retold, its meaning shifting with each telling. And so, the echoes of the airship lingered, long after the lights had faded. In the silence that followed, something had changed, not just in the witnesses, but in the world itself. The sky, once a symbol of certainty and order, had become a place of questions, a canvas for dreams and dreads alike. The legend of the sky ghost was not just a story of what was seen, but of what was left unsaid, the silences, the denials, the longing for answers that never came. In the end, the greatest legacy of the airship wave was not the sightings themselves, but the space they left behind, a gap in the fabric of reality, a reminder that some mysteries are never truly solved. The echoes in the dark are still there, waiting for anyone brave enough to listen. What lingers after the lights have faded and the stories have grown cold? The tale of the sky ghost is more than a puzzle of vanished airships and contradictory testimonies. It is a meditation on the nature of memory, truth, and the shadows that forever haunt the edges of our understanding. Memory is a fragile thing, shaped as much by longing and fear as by fact. For those who lived through the spring of 1897, the sky ghost became a touchstone, a moment when the world seemed to open, if only for an instant, to something vast and unknowable. But memory is also a trickster. It blurs the line between what was seen and what was imagined, between what was spoken and what was left unsaid. Over time, the details shift, the colors fade, and the story becomes something new, shaped by the needs and doubts of those who remember. Truth, too, is elusive. The witnesses of the airship wave were not liars, nor were they all dreamers. They were ordinary people, caught in an extraordinary moment, struggling to make sense of the impossible. Some clung to their stories, even as the world turned away. Others chose silence, protecting themselves from ridicule, or simply unable to find the words. The truth of the sky ghost is not found in any single account, but in the chorus of voices each. One incomplete, each one essential. And then there is the unknown, that vast and silent country beyond the reach of reason. The Sky Ghost reminds us that, for all our progress, there are still mysteries that defy explanation. It is tempting to dismiss what we cannot understand, to retreat into skepticism or denial. But what if the unknown is not a threat, but an invitation? What if the true lesson of the airship is not to fear the darkness, but to embrace it too? Accept that some questions have no answers, and that wonder itself is a kind of truth. So, what do you believe? If you had stood beneath that silent sky, would you have seen the lights? Would you have spoken out, or kept your secret close? Do you think the witnesses were touched by something real, or swept up in a storm of hope? And hysteria? Is the Sky Ghost a warning, a promise, or simply a reflection of our own restless longing for meaning? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced something you could not explain? Do you believe in the possibility of the unknown, or do you trust only what can be proven? What haunts you still in the quiet? Moments before sleep, when the world is dark and the sky is wide? The story of the Sky Ghost is not over. It lives on in the questions we ask, in the stories we tell, and in the silences that stretch between them. Perhaps that is the true legacy of 1897, not the vanished airship, but the enduring mystery, the echo that calls us to look up, to wonder, and to never stop searching for what lies just beyond the edge of the known. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows of history, where truth and legend blur, and the night sky still holds its secrets. The story of the 1897 Sky Ghost is a reminder that, no matter how much we learn, there will always be mysteries that slip through our finger stories that refuse to be tamed by reason or forgotten by time. If you've ever witnessed something you couldn't explain, or if your family has a tale that's been whispered through generations, I want to hear from you. Share your story in the comments below. What did you see? What did you feel? And how? Did it change the way you look at the world? Your experiences are part of this ongoing tapestry of the unknown, and together we can keep these mysteries alive. If you found yourself haunted by the questions raised tonight, don't let the conversation end here. Subscribe to the channel and join a community of seekers, skeptics, and storytellers who aren't afraid to peer into the darkness. Share this video with someone who loves a good mystery, and let's see how many others have stood beneath the silent sky, wondering what might be watching from above. And if you're brave enough, tell us, do you believe the Sky Ghost was real? Or was it a trick of the mind, a fleeting shadow cast by our own hopes and fears? The debate is far from over, and your voice matters. Next time, we'll descend even deeper into the forgotten corners of history, where the line between fact and nightmare grows thin. There are more stories waiting in the dark tailies of haunted places, vanished people, and secrets that refuse to die. So stay curious, stay skeptical, and above all, stay watchful. Because who knows? The Sky Ghost may be gone, but the night is long and the world is wide. What if, one night, the silent lights return, and this time, you're the one who sees them? Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon, and remember, the next shadow may already be moving.